Hello friends, and welcome to this new video in which we will be talking about nothing other but HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is simply a technology that enables people to create web pages and websites. It usually works hand in hand with other technologies like CSS and sometimes JavaScript in order to create beautiful looking web pages. HTML in particular is used for creating the web pages and adding the necessary content and information to it, like texts, images, videos, and so on. So here we are going to be looking at the various type of things we can add to a web page using HTML and how it works in creating web pages.
Okay guys, so in order to continue with this video, we will need a special type of application known as a code editor. So what is a code editor? A code editor is a program you can use to write and edit code. It's like a notebook for programmers where they can type their code, see it clearly, and get help with errors. Some examples include Notepad, Sublime Text, Atom, and Visual Studio Code, often called VS Code, which is the one I will be using for this tutorial, but if you have any other one I've listed, you can go with it. Okay, so now let's see how to install Visual Studio Code for those interested in using it. You simply need to open your browser, as I already have mine open here, and then I'm going to search code.visualstudio.com, which is the URL that is going to show us where to find the homepage of Visual Studio. So I will simply click on this first link here, and this is the Visual Studio Code website, and it automatically detects that my operating system on my computer I'm using is Windows. So it has given me the option to download for Windows, which I can simply click. If you had another operating system, you will find your own operating system written here, or you could simply go to this download tab here and you'll find all the various operating systems, but I will continue with this main download for Windows button. So I just need to click on it, and here we have our download which has started. We see it is downloading here, and if this download does not begin automatically, you can click on direct download link here. So I'm going to stop this download for now because I already have Visual Studio Code installed in my computer and I don't need to download this setup again. So I will cancel this download. But in case you didn't have Visual Studio installed yet, you will need to continue the download till the end. And once the download is complete, you can simply open your downloads folder. Like this is the downloads folder in my computer, and I'll need to double click on this to run this software. Now we simply need to follow the instructions given to us here in order to complete the installation of this application or this program. I'm going to first accept the terms, then I'll press next. My options are displayed in French for now because my operating system is in French, but it's no problem, you will see the equivalence in English. Suivant is simply next, and then I'll choose create an icon option and click on next again, and then finally click on install to complete the installation. But I am not going to click on this because, as I said, I already have this installed. But if you do not yet have it installed, you need to click this install button to complete your installation. So I will simply cancel this because I already have Visual Studio Code. I repeat. Okay, and now we have seen how to download and install Visual Studio Code. So let's continue and get back to our video. To get started writing my HTML code, I will first create a brand new folder on my desktop in my computer. I will do that by right clicking on an empty space, then I choose new and then folder. I'm going to name this folder HTML Basics and then enter. Okay, so I have created my HTML Basics folder in which I will be writing all my HTML codes. So let's get started by opening my VS Code in the first place. Okay, now we can see that I have my VS Code open, but there is nothing in it. So I'm going to click on the import folder option which is presented to me here in order to import the HTML Basics folder which I created for this video. So the folder was located in my desktop, which is where I will go to. So I simply have to scroll down and look for the folder which I created. Okay, here is it. I will click on it once and then click on the select folder option here. And now we see that our HTML basics folder is open in our VS Code editor. So we can start creating files within this folder and writing some HTML code within it. So I will first start by creating a first HTML file by clicking on the new file icon which is presented in my VS Code editor, and then I can give this file a name. I will name it index.html. The name you give to this file can be anything, provided it has the extension .html at the end. Also, we should avoid giving spaces within the file name. You can see my file name is index.html, but if I wanted it to be more than one word, instead of giving a space and then saying like yo, which may be my second word, this is not the best way to do this. I can attach these two words or link these two words with either a hyphen like index-yo.html, or I can give an underscore in the place. But for the sake of this video, my file name is just going to be index.html. So I will press enter to create the file, and here we have our HTML file created. Let's now talk about how an HTML web page is structured. So in every HTML document, the first thing we are expected to see is the doctype HTML tag, which is written as, you started by writing an angle bracket and then with an exclamation mark, then followed by doctype. You can see I'm already given the option in VS Code here to complete it. So the next thing we have to write after this is the HTML tag itself, which is written within a set of angle brackets. Within this angle brackets, I will write HTML. So this first line, doctype HTML, is a declaration. It's like raising your hand and saying, hello browser, this is a document written in the latest version of HTML, which is HTML5. This helps the browser display everything correctly. And now the second line which we have written, the HTML tag, is the root or the very top level container for everything on your web page. Think of this as the biggest box that holds every other box. Now this HTML tag, it needs to be closed. Like this first thing we have written is the opening HTML tag and should be followed by a closing HTML tag. The closing tag is written in a similar way to the opening tag, but the difference is that after the first angle bracket, we will add a forward slash to indicate it is a closing tag. So this is the difference between an opening and a closing tag. By the way, a tag is simply any character or group of characters that are written within a pair of angle brackets. So as you have been hearing me say already, angle brackets are simply when I write a less than sign followed by a greater than sign. This is what I mean by an angle bracket. And now a tag is anything that is written within a pair of angle brackets like this. For example, I can write a, this is a tag in HTML, and it can also be a word instead of just a letter like HTML, which we have already seen. So this is simply what we mean by HTML tags. Now inside the HTML tag, we have two main parts, the head and the body. The head is written like, and this also has its own closing tag. The head section is like the brain of your web page. It contains very important information about your page that you don't actually see on the screen. Some common things which we find within the head tag are other tags like the title tag, for example. In VS Code, when writing my tags, I don't have to necessarily start by writing my angle brackets like this. I can simply start writing the tag name, like title is the name of this tag I want to write, and then when I finish writing it, I click on enter, and you see that VS Code automatically puts this or formats this as a tag with the opening and the closing tag. The title tag doesn't put a title on the page itself, but it just puts the title in the browser's tab. You know, when you are browsing with your web browser and each page you open usually has its own tab which you can close on your browser. So the name of this tab is going to be given by this title tag in HTML. So I'm going to give a title for this our website, which is going to be my first web page. Now we mentioned that the HTML tag has two main parts, the first of which is the head, and now the next part is the body. So I will write body as a tag by writing body as I said, and then enter. VS Code automatically helps us to format this as a tag with the opening and closing tag. The body section is the most important part. Everything you put inside the body tag is what people actually see and interact with on your website. All the text, images, buttons, videos, all of them go right in this part. Now, all of this which we have written is the basic structure of an HTML document. But in VS Code, there is actually an easier way of doing this without having to write all of this manually. So I will cancel all of this, and at the first line of my HTML document, I will simply write an exclamation mark and press enter. We see that all what we wrote before has been given automatically by our VS Code editor, and it has even given us more contents than we actually had. So we first of all see here in the HTML tag, we have something written as lang equals English. This simply tells our browser that the default language for this our web page is going to be English. Next, we have some other extra tags which have been provided in the head section. So these tags provided are what we call meta tags. Meta tags are simply tags which give the browser more information about your web page. For example, we see the first meta tag written here, which says meta charset equals UTF-8. This tag tells the browser to use a special set of characters so that it can display letters and symbols from all around the world correctly. So you don't really have to bother about this type of things a lot. This is not really what we are going to focus on in this video. We also see the next meta tag which says name equals viewport and other things. This is super important for making your website look good on phones and tablets. It tells the browser to set the width of the page to the width of the device's screen. So this is the basic structure of an HTML web page. Now let us talk about comments in HTML. Comments are notes that we write in our code for ourselves or for other developers. The browser completely ignores them and does not show them on the web page. They are really useful for explaining what a part of your code does exactly. So to write a comment in HTML, we start by writing a less than symbol followed by an exclamation point and 2 hyphens. We can see that when we write the second hyphen in VS Code, the comment tag is automatically closed because VS Code has added 2 other hyphens at the end followed by a greater than symbol. So this is the general structure of or the way to write comments in HTML. Within these first 2 hyphens and the second 2 hyphens and the last 2 hyphens, anything you write in the middle is going to be a note which you are writing as a comment and it's not going to be displayed on the browser. So I can simply write any message here like this is a comment. I'm going to save this page. Now to view this on my browser, I can simply go to my folder which this HTML document is created in, which was this HTML basics we created just in this video, and I'm going to see my index file which is written there. It is written and the extension .html has not been written to, but our computer already knows automatically that this is an HTML file. So I'm going to click on it. You can see the logo of my browser is Microsoft Edge because that is my default browser, and that is why it is written as the icon for my index file. So I will click on this 2 times to open it in my browser. Okay, now we see that our page is displayed on the browser, but nothing is displayed on it. It is just a blank page. Even what we wrote, the message we wrote in this comment is not displayed because the role of comments is to write notes in our code that will not be displayed for the readers on the browser. So the next thing I want us to talk about are lists. A list is a collection of items that are displayed in a specific order. Lists are everywhere on the web, and HTML gives us easy ways to create them. We have 3 main types of lists in HTML. The first of which is the unordered list. An unordered list is a list of items where the order doesn't really matter, like a shopping list for example. It is created with the UL tag, which is written as UL. So UL is the tag which indicates that we are creating an unordered list, and you can see it has both opening and closing UL tags. So the UL tag is like a container for our list where all our list items will be written, but the list items themselves will be written within other tags again, which are the LI tags, which stand for list items. I'm going to create a list of fruits, and I've already created the UL container, which stands for unordered list as we have said. Now here I'm going to add some list items. The first fruit I will add will be apple, and then I will copy this line and paste the same thing on the line below and another one again. So I have 3 list items here. You can have as many list items as you want within your unordered list. I will just change the name of this fruit. The second fruit will be banana, and the third one will be orange. So I have an unordered list which has 3 list items, and each of these list items are food names, and each food name is written within a set of LI tags, which mean list item. So let's save this and we will see how this list is displayed on our browser. I will refresh this page, and here we see our 3 list elements: apple, banana and orange. So that is an unordered list which we have created. By default, this list shows simple bullet points. Like we see here, the list items are listed with bullet points, but we can change how those bullets look using CSS, which we add with a style attribute. So within the unordered list tag, I can write an attribute known as the style attribute, which enables us to give some styles to our HTML elements. So I will set style equals, and then I'm going to write list style and then type. Notice that each word is separated by a hyphen, and I will say colon, and I will give the style type, which is square, followed by a semicolon. So here I'm saying that I'm specifying that I want my list style type to be square. We see that what we initially had, the lists were circled bullet points. So I want these circled bullet points to be squares instead. Initially we didn't have to write this line, because when we don't write any or we don't specify any style type, the default is the circled bullet points. So when I will save this now and we refresh our browser again, we see that the list style type is now squares, shaded squares instead of circles. We can also specify circles here to go back to the circles which we had, circle. And apart from circle, I can also say none. And if I save this, we see that our list elements, let me refresh, our list elements are displayed without any style type. They are just displayed only the list names without anything preceding them. Okay, the next type of list we are going to see are ordered lists. It is created with the OL tag, which stands for ordered list. So I will write OL and enter. This is an ordered list which we have created. Again, each step is in an LI tag, which stands for list item, just as we saw with the unordered list. So I will write LI. So I want to create an ordered list which gives like a sort of morning routine for a student. So the first thing I will say is wake up, which is our first list item, and then I will copy this and add 2 more instructions. In the second place, I will put brush teeth, and in the third one, I will say eat breakfast. So let's save this and we will see the result in our browser. I will refresh the page again, and we see the list elements are displayed. We have 1 wake up, then 2 brush your teeth, and 3 eat breakfast. We see that the list items are displayed in a sequence of 1, 2 and 3. It's not just displayed with a set of bullet points or squares like with unordered list. That is what we mean by an ordered list, because it actually gives the order to follow. Now, same as with the unordered list, we can also change the style type for ordered list using the style attribute. So I'm going to say style, and I'll set this equal to list style type, and then the style type which I want to give is upper Roman, upper hyphen and Roman. So if I save this, we will see what upper Roman does. Upper Roman simply numbers the list elements with uppercase Roman numbers. We have Roman 1, 2 and 3 respectively. We could also use lower Roman like this to have the same Roman numbering but in lowercase, as we can see. And we can also use lower and upper alpha to have lettered numbering instead. So I will say lower alpha, for example, and save this. And here we see that if I refresh the page, our numbering is written as A, B, C with letters instead of numbers. And in the same light, I can also say upper alpha, and we also get lettered numbering but in uppercase this time around. So those are ordered lists in HTML. Okay, the next type of list we are going to see in HTML are description lists. A description list is a bit different from the ordered and unordered lists. It is used for making a list of terms and their definitions, like in a dictionary. It uses three main tags. The first one is the DL tag, which means description list. The description list tag is the main container for our entire list, just like we had the UL tag and the OL tag for unordered and ordered lists respectively. Within the DL tag, we can write two types of tags again. So instead of writing just the normal list tags which we are used to seeing with the other types of lists, the description list will use something else known as the DT tag. DT stands for description term, which is the word you are defining. For example, within this first DT tag, I will say HTML, and then after the DT tag, it should be associated with a, or it should be followed by another tag known as the DD tag. DD stands for description details, which is the definition of the term in the first DT tag here. So for HTML, I will say hypertext markup language. Okay, so now I have DT tag which says HTML, and I have another tag which is the DD tag which says hypertext markup language. Oh, let me write this correctly, language. So I'm going to add another pair of DT and DD tags. And as you've probably guessed it, now I'm going to talk about CSS. CSS stands for cascading style sheet, which is what I will write here. Okay, now let's save this and we will see how the result looks like. I will refresh my browser and we see that we get the first term HTML and its full meaning is given as hypertext markup language. After that, we also get the same thing for CSS, the description term, and then the description details, CSS followed by cascading style sheet. So that is a description list in HTML. Okay friends, now let's continue this video talking about HTML headings. Headings are like the titles and subtitles for your content. HTML provides 6 levels of heading from H1 to H6. H1 is usually the most important and biggest heading, while H6 is the smallest and least important. You should use them in order to create a clear hierarchy for your page. That is, it is not proper for you to leave from an H1 element, then the next subtitle after is an H4 when H2 and H3 have not yet been used before reaching the H4. So in order to create a heading, the first thing is you need to first write H followed by the number of the heading. It can be H1, H2, H3, 4, 5 or 6. So I will start by creating an H1. I will say H1 and then enter. This creates my heading tag, opening and closing tags. Now I'm going to simply write what I want to put as heading within these tags. So I will just say main title for this H1 to indicate that this is the main title for my page. And I will also copy this for us to see the other types of headings. I will paste this a couple of times. So this one I will change to H2 and the last one will be changed to H3. So for the H2 text, I will change the text to subheading, and I will change the text for the H3 to smaller heading. Okay, now let's save this and we are going to check how these headings are displayed in our browser. We see the first title says main title, which was the H1, The next is the subheading, which was the H2, and then after that we have our H3, which is smaller heading. Now let's complete the other headings, and then the next one I will change to H4. The next will be H5, and finally the last one will be an H6. So I will not change the text again to save time, because we already at least understand how it's going. So let's just check the result. So if I refresh this, we see that all our 6 headings are displayed in order.
Hello friends, in this video we are going to talk about HTML containers. A container in HTML is simply an HTML element that we use to separate HTML contents on a web page or to group related contents on our page together. So there are many types of HTML containers we can use, from single paragraphs to entire sections, which we are going to see in this video. So the first and most common HTML container that we have is the paragraph container. It is defined using the P tag, which is a single letter P, and it is a tag which has an opening and closing tag. Now within our paragraph, or between the opening and closing paragraph tags, I can write some text or contents that I want to be identified as one paragraph of my web page. For example, I will give this paragraph some contents. So here I have simply said this is paragraph 1, and then I can copy this to create a second paragraph below, which I will do. And I will change paragraph 1 to paragraph 2. Now if I save this and we check our browser, we can see this is paragraph 1 and this is paragraph 2 are displayed with some line spacing in between them to show that they are two unique or two different parts of the web page, which are paragraphs to be precise. I misspelled paragraph here, so let me correct the spelling. Now if you go back to paragraph 1, I'm going to add another line to this paragraph. So you see I added a second line to paragraph 1 which says Elon is American, and since it was in the same paragraph as P1, it was displayed on the same line as the initial message for paragraph 1, whereas our paragraph 2 is still displayed below it as its paragraph on its own. Okay, so the next HTML container we are going to see is the div container. A div is a container that is used to separate contents similar to the paragraph, but it is a little smaller than the paragraph. What I mean is that the paragraph gives a much bigger space in separation between the contents as compared to the div. Divs can be used within paragraphs as they are not entire paragraphs on their own, but they are just used to separate contents on different lines, even if they are not entire paragraphs. So I can write within my P1 or within my first paragraph the second line which says Elon is American. I can write it within a div. I will say div to declare my div tag. It is written as div, and it also has an opening and closing tag. I will then copy or cut this second sentence of my first paragraph and put it within my div. And if we save this, we are going to go back to see our result. We see this is paragraph 1. Our paragraph 1 has 2 separate lines for the 2 messages now. At first, Elon is American was on the same line with this is paragraph 1. But because we have separated it from the first line of the first paragraph using the div tag, they are on 2 different lines, even if it is just within the same paragraph. The next HTML container we are going to see is the span. The span is a container which is usually contrasted with the div, and it is written as SPAN. It also has an opening and closing tag. Now the span is an HTML container that we use to separate contents but without moving to a next line. So that is the difference between the span and the div. With the div, the content which is separated from the other one in the div is going to be displayed on a new line, or is going to make the contents displayed on separate lines. But with the span, we can separate contents from other parts without having to move to a new line. Let's save this and check our browser to see how this will be. We see this is paragraph 1 and Elon is American are still displayed on the same line,
even though we have separated the second sentence with a span container. Now this is mostly useful for when we want to separate this specific piece of content like this to maybe give it a different styling from the other parts of the same line or the same message. For example, I will give this a style by making the font color of this sentence to be red without changing the color of the first sentence. So we see I've added a simple style to this span element which changes its color to red. This has been done using some inline CSS. So I will check my result again, and we see this is paragraph 1 and Elon is American, but the sentence Elon is American has been displayed in red. Now the last HTML container we are going to see is the section container. So the section is a container that is used to group bigger parts of an entire page together. For example, we can have a set of different paragraphs or other elements that are related to some specific topic or are just related together. So we can do that using a section tag. It is bigger than a paragraph because a paragraph is just for a set of lines or a group of lines, but a section gathers contents that can be much broader. So I will do that, or I will create a section using the section tag. We write section in full, and it has an opening and closing tag too. So within this section, I can have a lot of different elements and contents that are about something or have something in common between them. The first thing I will do is add an H2 heading, which I'm going to write something within it as Lionel Messi. And after this, I can have a paragraph that is talking about Messi too. So I will say P, and then inside the paragraph, I will write a small message. I have written Messi is a football player, and then after my paragraph, I can even add something like an image of the person we are talking about, Messi. I don't really have an image readily available to add right now, but in my src attribute, I'm just going to give an image name. So we are assuming that I had an image called Messi.png, and then in the alt attribute, I will simply say Messi, so that this should be displayed in the place of the image. And I will save this, and in my browser we see Lionel Messi is displayed as the heading, and then we have Messi is a football player and the Messi image. So this entire thing is what was considered as one section of our page, and we see that it has been separated from the first two paragraphs also. So guys, those are HTML containers. They are not all the containers that exist, but these are just the ones I consider most essential and which you are most likely to be using on a daily basis. Hello friends, in this video we are going to talk about text editings in HTML. So what we mean by text editings is simply that we are going to modify or beautify some text on our HTML page using some HTML features. So in the body section of my page, I have a message which is a single line that says Neymar is a fantastic footballer, and I want to use this to illustrate some of the different text editings we can do using HTML, just HTML without any CSS. The first text editing we are going to see is how to make a text bold in HTML. So I have my message or my sentence, and let's assume that I wanted to make this first name or this first word, which is Neymar, to be bold and shown in a different manner from the rest of the sentence. I can make this particular content, which in our case is just this single name, to be bold using an HTML tag which is known as strong in full words, and then I will press enter to create the tag. Then I will simply copy or cut this name and paste in between the strong tag. Now this is going to show the name Neymar highlighted bold. So let's save this, and we are going to see our browser. We see that in the browser, Neymar is a fantastic footballer is displayed, and the particular name Neymar, which we wrote within the strong tag, has been written in bold. An alternative way to do that, or to do the same thing, is changing strong, and instead of using strong, I will use the B tag. So you see it is much shorter to write B, and it is going to do exactly the same thing. If I save this, I will check the browser again, and we see the same thing is given as result. Now, instead of making our text bold, I may want to write it differently. Like, for example, I can make this to be written as slant text, or which is commonly known as italic. In HTML, we can do that using the I tag, which stands for italic. So I will change the opening and closing tags to I and save this. And here we see that instead of the name being displayed in bold, it is displayed in italic or as slanting text. Now we can also achieve this same italic using another tag, which is the EM tag. It does the same thing as the italic tag, which is to slant the text. And we can see we have the same result as before. Now we can also change this to give another edit, like to make the text underlined. And this can be done using the U tag, which stands for underline in HTML. So if I simply say U Neymar, it means underline whatever is between this opening and closing U tag. Let's save and see the result. And we can see the name Neymar is underlined just as expected. And we can also decide for all of these editings or tags, we can decide to do them or apply them for the entire sentence or phrase. We see that everything is still going to be displayed or done as we expect. But I just want it to be on the footballer's name only, so that we can see the difference with the rest of the sentence for each of them. Now the next element we are going to see is the mark element, M-A-R-K, which stands for mark, and I will also change the closing tag to the same thing. So the mark element is going to display our text to be shown in a way like it was highlighted using a highlighter on a book or on a page. So let me save and we will see what I'm talking about. We see Neymar is highlighted in yellow, whereas the rest of the sentence isn't highlighted. The next element is the small element. Small, as the name implies, this is simply going to display the selected elements in a small or in smaller characters as compared to the rest of the sentence, which is what we can see. If you look very well, the name Neymar is displayed slightly smaller or in slightly smaller characters than the rest of the sentence. Now after the small, we are going to see the DEL tag, which stands for delete. And what this does, it's going to cross a line on our text or on the selected text, like in a way to show that it has been cancelled, like when you cancel something on a paper with a pen. So we can see Neymar has been crossed or cancelled with a line. That is because we have used the DEL or deleted element. Now the next element we are going to see is the SUB element, which stands for subscript. As the name implies, it is an element that is going to display our selected text as a subscript as compared to the rest of the sentence. Let's see what I mean by this. We can see that Neymar is shown as a subscript. A subscript implies something or some text that is displayed below and in smaller characters than the rest of the sentence. With the small tag, it simply made the text or the size of the characters of the word to be smaller than the rest of the sentence. But with the subscript, it not only makes the text smaller, but it also makes it to go down like a subscript, like we know in normal terms. And in contrast to the subscript, we also have the superscript, which is SUP instead of B. And this makes the text to be a superscript, meaning that it is going to be in smaller characters also, but it's going to go upwards instead. I hope we all know what a superscript means. So this is what I was talking about. So these are some basic text editings we can do in HTML using just HTML elements or tags without any CSS. Hello friends, in this video we are going to talk about links in HTML. So a link is simply something that we click on our web page to take us to somewhere specific. Generally, we use links to go to external websites or applications, or we can also use it to move between pages within our same website, or even still we can use links to move from one section to another within the same web page. So in this video, let's see how to use links to do all of the above in HTML.
So the first thing we are going to see is how to use a link that is going to direct you to an external website or application. In order to use links in HTML, we use a tag known as the A tag, which stands for anchor tag, and it is defined by writing an A and pressing enter in VS Code, since this helps me autocomplete my code. But if you are using a code editor that doesn't offer autocomplete features, you can simply type this out to create an anchor tag. And after writing this, within this attribute called href, I'm going to specify where I want this link to take me to whenever it is clicked on. So here I'm going to write the URL for an external application or website, which is going to be youtube.com. So I will write the URL for YouTube homepage, which is https. So this is the URL for YouTube homepage, which I have written within my href attribute, meaning that when I click on this link, it is going to take me to this direction. And then after I have closed the opening A tag, we can see that this other part here is the closing tag already. So between the opening and the closing tag, I'm going to write the text which is going to be displayed for the user or the website visitor, which he or she is going to click on before being taken to this URL which we have specified within the href attribute. So I'm going to simply write visit YouTube here, and I will save this. And now let's check our results on the browser. We can see that in our browser we see our message which we wrote, visit YouTube, and if I click on this link, this is how the link is displayed. It takes us to our YouTube homepage. We can see the YouTube URL which we specified here, and this is the YouTube homepage which we are taken to. We could also change this from YouTube to something else like Google, so that it should now take us to Google instead of YouTube. And here I will change visit YouTube to visit Google. And if I save this, we will check our result again. Now we see visit Google. I will click on this, and it takes us to our Google homepage. So that is how to use links to direct us to external web pages or websites. Now let us also see something interesting. We are going to see how to create a link in HTML that is going to prompt the user to send an email to another email address. So that is going to be done using the anchor tag still, but in the href attribute, instead of putting the URL of an external website like this, we are going to write mail to and followed by a colon, and after this you can write the email address which you want to send the mail to. So I'm going to send an email to Elon Musk, so I'm going to write Elon Musk email address here, which is elonmusk@gmail.com, and then I will change my message from visit Google to email Elon. Now what this does is that when we click on this, it is going to open whatever mail application you have in your device, and it is going to open a page that prompts you already to simply type a message and send to the email address which you have specified here. So here I'm going to save this, and we will check our result in the browser. Now we see the message saying email Elon. I will click on this, and we can see it has opened my email application on my computer, which is Microsoft Outlook. And we can see here also that the email address which we specified in our href is already selected here. So we simply have to type a subject and a message which we are going to send to this email address. So I will say the subject is going to be, and after that, after giving the subject, I will now type the body of the message, and I will just give some random text here and click on send. And now we see this is the email I have just sent, which says I need a billion. So that is how to write a link in HTML that is going to prompt a user to send an email to a specific email address. Now let's also see how to write a link that is going to direct a user or a visitor of your website to another page within your same website. In order to do that, I have another HTML file which I already created within the same directory with my index.html file, and I named it index2.html, and this is its content. Now I will go back to my index.html file, and I will write
a link that is going to send a user to the other HTML page, which is index2.html. I will do that using the anchor tag cell, and then within my href, I'm going to write the directory of the other HTML file. Since they are in the same directory or in the same folder, I can simply write the file name of the other HTML file. I will write a dot and a forward slash to specify that I want to go to another file within the same folder that this index.html file is currently in. And then I will choose the other file I want to go to. I can simply click on this, or I can decide to also type out the name manually. So I will write index2.html, and it is going to automatically recognize that we are trying to access the other HTML file, which is within the same directory called index2.html. And the message I'm going to write here is going to be visit second page. So I will save this and go back to my browser. And here we can see visit second page. The link is already displayed there, and I will click on this link, and it takes us to the second page, and we can see that we have been enabled to access this page by clicking on a link. Now I can click on this backward arrow to go back to my index.html page, and that is it. Now the last thing I want to show you is how to create an HTML link that is going to direct you to another place or another part within your same web page without going to another page or without going to another website or application, just within the same page to facilitate navigation. So in order to demonstrate that for you, I'm going to go back to my other index2.html page, because there I already created a lot of content, and we can see inside this page I have two paragraphs. This is the first paragraph, which I have given an ID of PAR1, which stands for paragraph 1. Basically, an ID is a value that we give to elements within an HTML page to uniquely identify elements from one another. So I have given this paragraph the ID of PAR1, or paragraph 1, meaning that anytime I write or access PAR1, we are going to know that I am accessing this particular paragraph, and in that case I cannot give another element within this page the same ID of PAR1. So that is the ID for paragraph 1, and I also have a second paragraph which I have given an ID also. This time the ID is paragraph 2, or PAR2. Now within this page, I'm going to create an anchor tag in my first paragraph. We can see that in the first paragraph we have a heading which contains the paragraph name, and then we have some random text generated below it. Now below the heading, I'm going to add an anchor tag, and in the href attribute, I am going to specify that I want this link to direct the user or the visitor to the second paragraph within the same page. So to do that, I will write a hashtag, and then followed by the ID of the other element I want the link to direct the person to, which is going to be PAR2, stands for paragraph 2. So it means when somebody clicks on this link, we are going to take the person to paragraph 2 within the same page. This hashtag is to specify that it is an ID that we are referencing, and I'm going to give this a small text for the link to be displayed. Note that the link must always be displayed with a text which is written between the opening and closing href tags, because without this there will be nothing for the visitor to click on. Within this, I'm going to write the message visit paragraph 2, and then I will also add a break tag in order for this link to be separated from the rest of the text below in this paragraph. And I'm going to simply copy this line, and I will also paste it for the second paragraph. Below the heading of the second paragraph, I will add this link there, and instead of visiting paragraph 2, we are already in paragraph 2 here, so I will say paragraph 1, so that when we are in paragraph 2 and the link is clicked, the visitor should be taken to the first paragraph instead. And I will also change the ID from paragraph 2 to paragraph 1. And now let me save this, and we will open this page on our browser. Now we see this is our second page, or our second index.html, which is opened. and we have our contents as it was supposed to be, the heading for paragraph 1, and we have the link also. I will click on this to go to the second paragraph, visit paragraph 2, and now we see we are in paragraph 2, and paragraph 2 also has a link that takes us to paragraph 1. I will click on this and we are taken back to paragraph 1. So we see that this link takes us to specific places only within the same HTML page because we are making use of IDs for the redirection. So that is how to use links or anchor tags in HTML.
Hello guys, in this video we are going to see how to use media elements in HTML. Media elements are simply elements that enable us to insert various media on our web page. These media include things like audios, images and videos. So we are going to be seeing how to insert each of those in a web page. So the first thing you can see, as you notice, I already have my index.html file, but I have a new extra folder which is accompanied with this file, which is the media folder. It's a folder that I've called media. Now for this, you will simply need something similar to me. This is my HTML basics folder, which I've been using throughout the video. So within the folder that contains your HTML file, you will create a new folder inside, which you are going to call anything you want. I've called mine media. And inside this media, if I double click on it, I have 3 elements inside. I have 1 audio, 1 image and 1 video. So if you want to follow along in this video, you will need these 3 elements: a video, an image and an audio. Now let's go back to our IDE, or to our code editor for those who prefer to call it like that. Now you can also notice here I have simply split my screen, or I have divided my screen between my code editor and my web browser, so that we will not have to be moving back and forth between the two to see our code and to see the result. So to do that, you can simply enlarge your code editor by clicking on this. This is a crop option here, and the web browser also has a crop option similarly to that. You might need to adjust it a little bit depending on the way yours crops. Okay, now let's start immediately with the audio element. Let's see how to insert an audio element in a web page. So to insert an audio in HTML, it is as simple as writing a tag called audio. I will write audio and press enter. And now we see that this audio tag comes with an attribute already. This is the most important attribute inside this our audio tag. And this attribute is the src attribute, which simply contains the name of the audio file you want to insert in the web page. So if I enter my media folder here, I have an audio file which is my audio.mp3, so I will simply write that name inside this src attribute. But remember that it is inside another folder. So I will start by writing the name of the folder in which this audio element is found. I will first write a full stop followed by a /. This indicates that I want to look for a file or a folder which is in the same directory as my index.html file, and I will choose media, which is the name of this folder. And inside media I have 3 components or 3 elements. I will write the name of the audio element now, which is my audio. You can see that it's already displayed or proposed here. I will click on it, my audio.mp3. So here I'm trying to insert an audio file which is my audio.mp3, and notice that my and audio are linked with a small underscore here. You cannot have any space within your audio name like this. It's not going to work properly. So if you have multiple words in your audio or in your file name, you need to link them with an underscore or with a hyphen. And now let's save this. And if you look in our browser, even if I refresh, you see that nothing is there, or nothing has displayed there for now, because the audio doesn't have anything that we can see it with. It is just an audio which needs to be played. And that leads us to our second attribute within the audio tag, which is going to be the controls attribute. I will write control, and controls is simply a single attribute. I simply have to write just the name controls. It does not have any equals to sign with any values that I will give to it. We call this a boolean attribute. It can either be there or it is not there. So I will save this now. And once I write controls, we can see that we have our audio element which is displayed on our web page with some controls. These are what we call controls: the play button. We have the play button and the volume button. We have the 3 dots for more options also. And all these things we see, these are simply what we call audio controls. So the controls attribute simply adds this. Now we can play our audio. Okay, so that's all about the audio. Now after controls, I'm going to add a new attribute, which is the autoplay attribute. So I will write autoplay. So the autoplay attribute is simply going to make the audio play immediately after we save this file. So I will simply click on save, and the audio has played immediately as we save the file. So this simply means immediately you load your page, the audio is going to start playing. And finally, I'm going to add another attribute, which is the loop attribute. So loop simply means the audio is going to continue playing continuously until we decide to pause it or stop it ourselves. It's once it ends, it's going to restart, it's going to end and restart till the end. So if I save this and we play our video again, I'm in audio. Okay, you can see that as the audio ends, it automatically restarts again. And we can also see, let's try to use some of these controls, like the volume button, for example. This is the button to mute. You see it is muted now. If I click on this again, it's unmuted. So that is how to use or insert an audio element in a web page using the audio tag in HTML. Now let me cancel this audio tag here, and we are going to go to the next thing. Now let's see how to insert an image in the web page. To insert the image, we are going to use the img tag, which stands for image. So I will simply write img, enter. And similarly to the audio tag, we see that image comes with a source attribute or an src attribute. And this is the source of the image or where the image is coming from. I will also write a full stop and a forward slash to show that I want to access a folder in the same directory as my index.html file, which is the media folder. And inside media, I will choose my image.jpeg. So this is the image name, my image, while .jpeg is the image file extension. This can be different. Images may have different file extensions such as .jpeg, .png, .jpg, and so on. So now if I save this, we see this is the image which is displayed. It's simply the image of a very beautiful car, a Lamborghini, my favorite car on earth. And we see that this image is inserted quite alright, and we can see that another attribute also came in this image tag, which is the alt tag. So alt stands for alternate or alternative, and it is what is going to be displayed if the image is not able to load on the viewer's browser. So here I'm going to write car, or simply write Lambo, so that if somebody was to view this image but is not able to view it for some reason, he's going to see this text Lambo displayed on it, and going to at least know that it is a Lambo that is there. So if I save this, let me misspell the image name a little bit. I will write my image1.jpeg and save this. Now we see my image1.jpeg does not exist in this directory, so we are displayed Lambo instead. So that is the use of the alt attribute. Now let's go back to the correct image that was there, and we can see that the image is very large. It occupies the entire width or the entire browser screen, but I can resize this image using some image attributes, which are the width and the height. So I will say width. The width attribute specifies the width the amount of width that we want this image to occupy. So I will set this to a value. I can give any value here, like for example 500, and I will save this. Now we can see the width is reduced, and I can also give the height. I will say height, and I will give this a height of, let's say 300. Let me just say 400, and now we see the height has been reduced, so I will just give the height 500, same as the width. And now we can see the image is resized. Let me just enlarge this screen, this browser screen, and this is how the image looks like at full screen. So guys, that is how to insert images in an HTML web page. And the final media element we are going to see now is the video element. So to insert a video, we simply use the tag video, and similar to the audio and the image tags, it comes with a source attribute, and we already can guess what this source attribute means. So I will go ahead and simply write the name of my video, but the video is in the media folder first. And remember that I'm writing this full stop and a forward slash just because I want to specify that this media folder is in the same directory with my index.html file. And here I'm going to choose the video, which is my video.mp4. Remember, we are not supposed to have spaces in between. If there are any spaces, you link or remove the spaces by linking the words with an underscore or a hyphen. And let's save this now. And this is my video which is displayed. It doesn't play now because similar to the audio, once you insert the image, you need to have controls on it. So I will add another attribute, which is the controls attribute, and this is a boolean attribute. Remember, it means once you write controls, it is going to automatically add the controls. You don't need to write equal to something. So let me save, and now let me expand this screen. We see that we now have the video with some controls. We have the play button, the mute and unmute button, and more options also, playback speed and so on. We also have the option to make this video full screen even and small screen back. So similar to the image tag, I can also use the width and height attributes on the video. So I will say I want the width of this video to be, I will give it 500 too, and I will also give the height as 500. And now we can see we have the width and the height 500 each. Now let's go ahead and play this video to see what it is. I can mute it if I want and unmute again. And you can see you can even go backward. Okay, so we can also add other attributes to these video elements. Like one we are going to add, for example, is the autoplay, which is going to make the video start playing automatically also when the page loads, as we saw with the audio. And now when the page will load, the video starts playing immediately. Okay, and the last attribute I'm going to add for the video is going to be the loop attribute. So we can also already guess what loop means. It is going to make the video to restart after it ends. Let me just forward this towards the end. You see that once it ended, it restarted again. So we see that once the video ended, it restarted again. And I'm going to add another attribute again, which is the muted attribute. So this means the video is going to be playing on mute mode by default. But if I click here, I can still unmute it. And so guys, that is how to use media elements in HTML. We have seen how to insert audios, videos and images in an HTML web page using their respective tags in HTML. Okay guys, in this video we are going to talk about tables in HTML. So a table is simply a way of displaying information on a grid which has rows and columns. So we can see this simply displays some information that has been represented using a table which is arranged in rows and columns. So the columns are simply the vertical arrangements we can see. Like we can see we have three main columns which are the name column, we have the country column, and we have the favorite number column. So those are the three columns we have on this table. And as for the rows, we have 4 rows. The first row is the row that contains the headings, and we have 3 other rows inside the table. So as I said, the columns are the vertical arrangements on the table, while the rows are the horizontal arrangements. And we can see in this table there are some important parts which we have to take note of. The first part is the first row of the table, which is the row that contains name, country and favorite number. So this is the table head, which is the part that contains the first row of the table, which has the titles of each of the different columns. And under the table head we have the next important part of the table, which is the table body, which are the rest of the columns that we see here. And as we can see, this is a simple table that shows a list of some few football players with their country and favorite number, and we are going to be using this to try to replicate this in order to understand how to work with tables in HTML. So this is the current table we have, and in the next step it is currently empty, and it is where we are going to be producing our own table. So I will come to my body here and I will create a table. To create a table we use an HTML tag which is known as the table tag. I will simply write table, enter, and this table tag is simply the initial table tag which tells our HTML document that this is a table we want to create. So the next thing we are going to do after the table tag is we are going to create the table header and the table body. So to create the table head, we use a tag which is the T head tag, which stands for table head. And as I said, the head usually contains the titles of the various columns in the table. And after the table head, we have the table body, which is written as C body. Now in the head, if you can see, we go back to the initial table. I said each of these horizontal arrangement of lines is what is called a row. So everything we write inside the table needs to be in a given row. So inside the table head, I will create a row for the table head, which is going to be TR. The TR tag means table row. And inside the table row, we have to now write the titles of each of these different columns. The first column is the name column, and to write that
the title for the name column, which is simply name, I will use another tag which is th, which means table head, and enter. And inside this I will write name. Now we have to write the second column, which is going to be the country column, so I will also say t head, and inside I will say country. And for the last column I will say t head again. Sorry, th, not t head. Th is different from t head. T head is used for the entire table head, while th is simply used for defining each of the column titles. So I will say th, and the last column title is going to be the favorite number, which has been abbreviated as fav number. Now that is it for the table head. I will go to the table body and also write or create some other columns for the values of the table body. So inside the table body is where we write these values under each of the table columns now. So inside the body I will create the first row, which is going to be with the tr tag, and inside this first row in the body I have to insert the details for the first football player, which is Lionel Messi, with Argentina as country and 10 as favorite number. So what I will do is the equivalent of the th tag in the table body is going to be the td tag, because here we are not writing column titles, so I will say td. Td means table data. So here with the td tag we are going to write the actual values that are going to be inserted under the different column titles. So for this first td tag I have to give the value that will be inserted under the name column for the first player, and this first player has the name of Lionel Messi, so I will write Lionel Messi. Let me minimize this so that we should have enough space on our code editor. And after that, within the same row I will also say td to give the value for the country of the first player, which is going to be Argentina. And now I will use a last td tag for the favorite number of Lionel Messi, which is going to be the number 10. And now let's save this, and I will go back to our current working tab. This is what we have so far. We have name, country, and favorite number, Lionel Messi, Argentina, and number 10. So I will simply copy this table row and paste below. I will paste it 2 times for the 2 other players of the table and simply modify the values in between the td tags. Okay, so now I have modified, or I have completed all the table rows. I will save this, and we see we have the names updated in our browser. But if you look at our original table, we see that we have lines in between the table that separate the cells from each other and separate the rows from the columns also. But here we see there are no lines, and it is very difficult to understand the table if you don't pay enough attention even. So to include those lines to separate the table rows and columns, we go to our table, first table tag here, and we are going to add a table attribute, which is the border. I will say border equal to 1. So this border attribute is going to simply add borders to the table rows and columns, and if we don't want any borders, we simply don't include it. But if we want a border, we write border and set it equal to 1. So I will save this, and now we see that we have borders on the table rows and columns. But if we look at the initial table again, we see that here the lines are single lines, but whereas on our current table we have doubled lines because the borders are doubled. That is because for the first cell, which is the cell containing name, it has borders on all the 4 sides, and the next cell below it with the value Lionel Messi has borders on the 4 sides also. That is why it appears double here. But if you want the borders to be more like the first table we have, which are just single lines, we can come to our table tag here again and add another attribute. We are going to add a style attribute. Style, this is to give some CSS styles, but it's not going to be very complicated. So we just say style, and then we are going to write a border style, which is border collapse, border hyphen collapse. And then I can choose an option for the border collapse. These are the different options that are proposed, but I will choose the first one, which is collapse. So if you want the borders to be single borders only, we have to write border collapse equals collapse, and I will save this. Now we see we have our table resembles a lot the initial table with single border lines. Okay, now we can see the 2 tables look very identical now. So that is how to use tables in HTML to represent or display information using rows and columns. Okay guys, let us now talk about iframes in HTML. An iframe in HTML is a little window on your web page that shows another web page inside of it. So we saw previously how to use anchor tags, which are links that when somebody clicks on your web page, they are going to open or redirect the user to a different web page. but an iframe enables somebody to view a different web page without going out of the current web page. The viewer is going to simply see the iframe as a sort of dynamic image that is within the same current web page. So now let's see with an example of using an iframe how to actually use iframes in HTML. We use an iframe by writing the iframe tag, which is simply iframe. This is the way it is spelled. I'll press enter, and now we see this iframe comes with two important attributes, which is the src attribute and we have the frame border. The src attribute is used to give the path or the URL of the web page which you want to embed inside this given web page. So I'm going to use an example with the Wikipedia website. I'm going to try embedding the Wikipedia homepage inside my current web page as an iframe. So I will write the URL of the Wikipedia homepage, which is https:// and then wikipedia.org. And now when I save this, you need to be connected to the internet for this to display successfully. So I have embedded the Wikipedia homepage here, and I can type any search I want and it is going to work as normal. I will say Elon Musk. Let me search Elon Musk and see. And now we see results of our search, which is simply information about what we search, Elon Musk, and all of this is without having to leave this current web page which we are in. Now let's try using the second attribute, which is in the iframe, which is the frame border attribute that is set equal to 0 here. So the frame border attribute simply says if we want our iframe to have borders or not. Borders are simply the lines that are going to encircle these iframes. Let's give these borders a little bit and see. So by default, the border or the frame border was set to 0. It can be either 0 or 1. If you write 0, it is going to have no borders, but if you write 1, it is going to have a border, or it is going to have borders. Now I will change this 0 to 1 and save this. Now if you notice keenly, you are going to see that this iframe here, some borders have been added on the different sides of the iframe. But if I change this to 0 again, you have to pay close attention because the borders are not very thick. So I'll change this to 0 again, and if I save it, now the borders have disappeared. So that is what the frame border is used for. And I can also decide to change this iframe URL here. Instead of wikipedia.org, let me try with another website like google.com, for example. So that's the URL for Google's homepage. I will save this, and here we see the Google homepage is not displayed. If we hover on this, we say refuse to connect. So the reason for this is because a lot of websites usually disable the use of iframes, or they don't allow their website or web pages to be used as iframes on another web page. So there is a way they disable that, and we are unable to use the given website as an iframe or given web page. But some other websites enable iframes like Wikipedia, which we saw. So there are some websites with which it is going to work, but it won't work with others. So let's change back to our Wikipedia which we had, and we see it works now normally. Now we can also resize this iframe. We can see it is displayed the way it is, but we can also use the width and height attributes on this iframe to increase or decrease the size. So I'll write the width. The width is going to define the horizontal length of the iframe, and I'll give this a length of 500, for example, while the height is going to be for the vertical length, and I will give this a height of 500 too. I don't know why I like 500. Let me save this, and now we see I will enlarge this a little bit because I zoomed this too much. Now let me put it on normal 100%. Okay, we can see this is the width and the height set to 500 each. I had previously zoomed this, that is why it was already looking big, but let me remove the width and the height attributes to see the way it was normally supposed to be. So this is how it appears normally without the width and the height. But if I put back the width and the height and save it, we can see that it is resized to be a little bit larger. And you can also increase or decrease the width and height values as you want, depending on how you want it to look. Now the last thing I'm going to show under iframes is how to embed a web page that is not from an external website. Like for example, within this our same project, maybe we can be having this index.html file in a given website that you are creating yourself. So I can come to my project directory here and I'll create a second HTML file. I will call this index.html. Let me rename the file where it's supposed to be .html, but I got .html. Okay, I have index2.html. Now let me put some few content in this HTML page. I'm going to simply put in the body a heading 1, which is going to say hello. And now we are going to embed index.html2 as an iframe in index.html1. So in my src, I will remove this URL here, and then I'm going to write a full stop and a forward slash to select a file within my current directory, and I will choose index2.html. And now if I save this, index2.html is going to be used as an iframe inside index.html, and that is why we see the content of index2.html, which is hello. Now let me add some more content in our index.html file to see how it is going to be separated from the iframe. So before the iframe, I'm going to write another heading. Let me see. This heading is going to say good morning. And now we see this is the good morning that is from heading, or that is from index.html, while hello is an iframe. Let me add some borders to the iframe so that we see how it is separated. I will change the frame border from 0 to 1 and save this again. And now we clearly see how the borders distinguish between the iframe content and the main content of our initial page. So guys, that is how to use iframes in HTML. We can use them to embed a web page inside another web page so that somebody can see the content of another web page while still being in the same web page that they are currently in. Hello guys, let's now talk about how to use forms in HTML. So for context, a form is simply a sort of document that we usually give people to fill in order to collect specific information about them or about something in particular. Now with regards to HTML, we are going to be seeing how to create forms, but which are going to be, I will call them digital forms, which are forms on a web page. Typically, you will see HTML forms on things like login screens of applications or websites. For example, when you want to log into or you want to create a Facebook account, you are usually going to see a sign up or login form where you are asked to give some information like your name, your email address, your date of birth, and so on. So that is an example of an HTML form. So we are going to be trying to create something similar to that in this video. Now obviously we are not going to be creating an exact Facebook login page, but the intention is simply to see how to create a form in HTML with as many type of different HTML input types and tags as possible. So in order to use a form in HTML, we start by creating the form using a tag which is known as the form tag. So we simply write form, and if I click on enter, it creates the tag for me. Now we see this tag is created with an attribute which is the action attribute. So the action is simply an attribute which specifies where the information collected in this form is going to be sent to once we finish collecting. So you can be sending your information to another file. It can be another PHP or JavaScript file, or it can be another file for your backend or your server for a full stack web application if you're building that. And in that case, you will need to write the name of the file here. For example, if I was sending this to a PHP server file, I could write something like server and then .php. So this is going to submit this form to server.php file when it's complete or when it's submitted. But for the moment, I don't want to specify any other file where I want to send the form to, because here we are focusing just on HTML. So I will just write an hashtag sign. So you write the hashtag when you don't want to precise any particular place where the form is to be submitted. And then I will come in between my opening and closing form tags, and we can start writing other things in between now. Now I want to create a form that is going to collect as many details about a person as possible. So for example, let's say I want to ask somebody for their name. In order to do that in this my form, I can start by writing a label. So I will write a label. It's an HTML tag, and the label is simply a tag that we use to write or to precise the type of information that we want the user to enter in the given input field in our form. For example, if we come here, I can write something like name inside my label, and if I save this, we see that name is displayed on our browser. So I will write name followed by this column, and then after this I will provide a space where somebody can write the name. Now let's do that. To provide the place where a person is going to be able to type something, we are going to use a tag which is known as input. So we have input type text. This type is an attribute that defines the type of value we are expected to write inside this input field. So let's save this first, and we see this was the label we got which says name, and then after the name there is an input field which is provided where somebody can type a value. So that's how it functions. And then when we say type text, it means inside this place we are expected to receive a text value. Now we also have different other input types which we are going to see as we go through this video. Now something else I want to talk about is this for attribute in our label tag. We see we have an attribute for which is set to nothing for now. This for attribute is used to link our label to our input field. So for example, I will write label for
and then I will set this equal to name, and I will come to my input tag also. After the type equals text, I will write another attribute which is the ID, and I will set ID to name too. So usually the value which is inside the for attribute in the label is supposed to be the same as the value which is inside the ID attribute for the input field, and this simply tells our browser that this particular label is associated to this input below it, so that they should be at least linked in a way, because without this for attribute and this ID attribute in the input field, the label and the input field are not linked in any way. So this is simply to make them connected. And then after this, we can also add some different attributes in our input field. The next one we are going to see is going to be the placeholder. So I will say placeholder, and then I can set this to a value like, let me say Elon Musk. So we can see what has happened here. We have name equals, and then inside our input field we have Elon Musk that is written in the background here. Now this name Elon Musk is simply a sort of directive that we are giving to our viewer, so that if somebody sees this input field with Elon Musk in the background, he can be able to maybe guess that he or she is expected to enter a name inside here. And once you start typing any name like John, for example, the name Elon Musk in the background has disappeared automatically. Another thing we can use also is the value attribute. So instead of placeholder, I will write this as value, and I will save this. Now we see is something similar displayed. We still have name equals Elon Musk in the input field, but now this Elon Musk is an actual value that is already written in the input field. It's not just in the background. So if you start typing another name, Elon Musk has not disappeared. We have to first cancel all of this before we start writing our own name inside. So that is the difference between the value and the placeholder attribute. And the next attribute in the input field we are going to see is the name attribute. So I will say name, and I will give this the value of name. So this name attribute is simply an attribute that gives a brief description of the type of value that is stored inside this input field for the file where we are going to submit the input to. So as I said, in our action attribute, we specify where we are going to submit this form information to. But when we submit it, let's say we are submitting it to a backend or a server somewhere, and this server receives this input value, and it is going to look at the name attribute to be able to understand what is the type of information or data that is stored inside this input field. And when it is going to see this name attribute and it is going to see name is set equal to name, then it is going to understand that this is surely the name of a person that was collected in this input field and then submitted. Now we are going to understand better with the more input fields which we are going to be seeing along the video. And we can also have other attributes in this, like we can have the min length. So the min length attribute specifies the minimum length of characters that are to be given in this input field, while we also have another one which is the max length, and the max length on its part specifies the maximum number of characters that this input field can contain. Now in order to see this function properly, I will first have to put a submit button to this form. So I will come below and then I will write input. This is a new input field that we have, but in the type attribute now, instead of text, I'm going to write type submit, and I will save this. So when we have an input of type submit, what this does is it creates a button which we are going to click on in order to submit this form. We see that this submit is shown in the form of a button. So that is what the input type submit is. When you want to create a button that submits a form, or that somebody will click on to submit the form once he or she has finished filling, we use the input type submit. Now let's come back to our min length and max length attributes. So I will give, let's first try without giving any values for this. I will write my name here. Let me cancel Elon Musk. I will give another name. I'm going to write Desmond, and then I will submit this form. Now we see it has been submitted, and we know that it's submitted because once we submitted it, the page refreshed, and when it refreshes, we see the default name that was written Elon Musk back. So when you submit a form by default, the web page is going to refresh, and that's how you know the form has been submitted successfully. Now if I come to my main length, I will say I want this value or this name to be not less than 5 characters, for example. And for the max length, I will say I want it to be not more than 10 characters. Then I will save this. Now let me write a name that is below 5 characters. Like Musk is a 4-character name. So if I try to submit this, we see we get an error message. Please lengthen this text to 5 characters or more. And in the same way, if I try to give a name with more than 10 characters, let me just write any random thing here, which is going to be above 10 characters. You see, once I've reached the 10 character, I'm not allowed to continue writing anything. I'm actually clicking some keys on my keyboard, but nothing is writing again because we have already reached 10 characters. If you count these letters, they are 10 exactly. So I can submit this now and it works successfully. Now if I remove this min len equals 5, let me put this min len, I will remove this whole attribute in general, and if I remove the first name, I will remain with Elon. I can be able to submit this even if it is just 4 characters because we have not specified any min length this time around. So we'll submit. Oh, it still shows the error message, and that's because I cancelled the min length but I did not save the changes. Let me save the changes in my HTML file, and I will submit a 4 character name again. Let me click on submit, and now we see it has been submitted successfully. Now we also have another attribute which I want to talk about, which is the required attribute. I will write required here, and this required attribute simply means that we must provide a value for this input field before submitting the form. Now let me first cancel the required again. I will cancel it back, and then I will come to my, let me save the changes, and I will come to my form, and I'm going to cancel this name from here. I will not provide any name, but I can submit this form, and we see it has submitted successfully because the page has refreshed. But if I now come back here and put my required attribute, this is going to make sure that each time we want to submit this form, the input field must have a value within it before it is submitted. It means you cannot submit the form if this input field is empty. So let me click on submit now, and it has submitted. But if I remove this value that is inside and try to submit without any value, we see an error message says please fill in this field. So that is the use of the required attribute. We use it when you don't want the input or a particular input field to be left empty. Now we have talked enough about the input type equals text. Let's look at other input types which you have in HTML. Now I will write another set of label and input below this. For example, I can say I will write label again. So I will simply copy this set of label and input tags which we have here, and then I will come below and paste them. So this time around, instead of the name, I want to collect the email of a person. So in my message here, I'm going to change name to email, and whatever is written between the opening and closing label tags is simply what is going to be displayed as a message for the user here. So I'll ask for the email, and for the input type, I will write email. So there is an input type for email, which makes sure that any email or any value we provide for this input type is going to be in the form of an email. For the for attribute, I write email. This is just to link my label tag to my input tag, and I also write email here. Now for our name attribute, we want that the server should be able to identify that this input field was containing or contained the email of a person. So for the name, I will change the value of name to email, so that when somebody sees or when the server sees email, it is going to understand that the value of this input field is an email address. And for the value, I will cancel this value attribute. You can keep it if you want, but I want to reduce the attributes we want. Now for the value, I can write a sample email here like yo@gmail.com, and I will save this. Now we see we get our email, and we see that this is displayed very poorly. The first line is just mixed with the second line. The name input is mixed with on the same line with the email label. So in order to separate them, I will use a break tag. So a break tag is a tag we use in HTML when we want to jump to the next line after completing one line, and I will write BR and press enter. This is going to create a space or a line break, and I'll save this. Now we see we have the name, and then we have the email below it, and we can also use the break tag to go to the next line for the submit button, so that the submit button should be below the email input field. So here I will write break 2, and now we see each of them are on their own line. Now for this email, we can also even use the placeholder in the place of value, but I want to just cancel this value attribute just so that we have less things to be concerned about here. Usually all the attributes which we use in this input for the name, they are going to be also usable in the other inputs which we are going to see, most of them. Like we can also use the max length and the min length for the email input, but I just want to cancel them because we have already seen what they are used for. Even the required attribute, no, for the required I can leave it for now. But the point is, most of them, they are usable in all types of input fields. Now if you go back to this our break tag which we use to separate these different lines, I would prefer to cancel this. Instead, what I will do is that I will put each of these label and input pairs within their own div tags, because the div by default is going to give line spacings already, and it is also going to group the tags in an organized way. So I will write a div. This is just my personal preference. If you like, you can continue working just with the break tag. So I'll cut these 2 lines here, this label and input pair. I will cut it from here and paste it inside my div. Now I also have another div for the email label and input. Okay, now we see, to me it looks more presentable like this. We have this div that contains just the label and input for the name, while we have this other div below for the label and input of the email address. So this just looks more organized to me. And then below we have our submit button as usual. If we save this, this is going to
displayed just the same way. And now for the email, I will try to submit this. We have the name Elon Musk email. I will not give anything, and I will submit this. Now we see please fill in this field because there is a required attribute on the email. And if I try to write a value or an email address inside this email field, let me write something like, I will write Elon, and I will try to submit this as an email address. You see this gives an error because it has identified that Elon is not a valid email address because it does not have the @ symbol. Usually every valid email is usually something like we have some series of text and then we have an @ symbol followed by some series of text after again. Like if you see an email like, let me say elon@gmail.com. So this is typically the form of an email. So it contains the name Elon before and then an @ symbol followed by the email provider, which is gmail.com. So this is how an email is recognized to be. If you try to submit this now, it has submitted successfully because the email was in a valid syntax or in a valid form. Now the next input type we are going to see is going to be the password type. I will copy this set of div and paste it below. Now for this one, I'm going to be trying to collect a password from the user. So in the place of email, I will put password, and in my for attribute, I will also put password here. For this for and ID attribute, the word or the keyword you use there is not very important, or for most of the attributes even, but the most standard one is the type attribute. Here the type attribute, there are specific or fixed types that are already defined by HTML, and your type must be one of them. We have different types like text for regular text, we have email for email addresses, and now for passwords, which we are seeing, we have the password type. So I'll write password. I will change this to password too because our for attribute is set to password. And now for the name attribute, we want our server to understand that this is a password value. So I'm going to write password here. This is simply a small message I'm sending to the server or to whatever file is going to be receiving this input field. And for the email address, I'm going to cancel this required keyword because I don't want to keep inserting an email each time, but I will save this. And now we see an input field for the password, which is added below, and I will just maintain the same name, Elon Musk. The email is not required, so I will not give any value there, but the password, I'm now going to write something here, and you see that by default the password is hidden because this is usually how we see in most applications. Their passwords are hidden when writing, but we also have this I symbol here, which we can use to make the password characters visible, which we can click to be on and off. And then I can submit this now, and we see it has submitted successfully, which means it works. And for the password, we can also use the min and max length character or attributes which we saw earlier. For example, I will say I don't want my password to be less than 5 characters, so I will say min length and then I will give 5. Now if I save this and I try to give a password of maybe 3 characters and submit, this refuses. But if I continue adding the characters to at least 5 and submit, it has submitted successfully. Okay, so now let us look at the next input type, which is the date input type for collecting dates from users. So I will copy this block of code and paste it below. Now I'm going to be trying to collect the date, so I will change everywhere where there is password, I will put date instead. Or I will say date of birth, so that somebody can insert his or her date of birth. I've just written DOB for date of birth, and in the for I will write DOB. This time I can write them in small letters. And for the type, instead of password, I will have to put date. Okay, so I have my date of birth. I'm going to remove these other extra attributes, required and min length. They are not very useful here. Of course, you can still use the required attribute to make sure that the date of birth is obligatory. So let's save this now. And we see we have this input field where we can insert the date of birth. The format is given as day, month, and year. So I can give a day like 2nd of June 2020. Yes, I will just leave it like that, and then I can submit it. The password is required, so let me give a random password there, and I can submit it, and it's submitted. And also we can, instead of typing the date of birth manually here, we can simply click on this small calendar icon, and it's going to show us this interactive calendar which we can select a date of birth from. So here I can choose the year and the month. Here this shows for 2026. So I can simply go down and choose another year, or I can go up also and choose a year before 2026. I'm going to choose, for example, 2015, and then I will choose a month inside 2015 like June, and I will choose the day finally, which is 2nd June, and I will submit this. And of course, let me give a password again. Okay, and we see now it's submitted. So that's how to select dates in HTML. And now after dates, let's also look at numbers. So after the date of birth, I will ask a person to give a number. Let me just say age. I know it's a bit odd to
have the date of birth and you're asking for the age, but I just want to demonstrate how to use numbers, and it's just an example. So for the type, I'm going to use number because the age is of course a number. As Ronaldo usually says, age is just a number. Okay, so I've put age everywhere. For the name attribute is equal to age, so IZH and for age. Now let's save this, and we see the age is displayed there. We can simply type any value here like 6, and then I can use this up and down arrows to reduce or increase the number, and you see. And I can also give a default value for this age. Let me say I will say value equals, let me say 10. And for number types, we can also specify the minimum value and the maximum value we want. We see with the min len and max len, which we saw previously, min len was used to give the minimum number of characters that can be used for a text field or any input field, while max len is used to give the maximum number of characters that can be used in an input field. But here with numbers, we can use other attributes which are similar, which are min. This time we got just min, not min len, and min simply means the minimum number value for this input field, while max, which is just max, not max len this time around, is to specify the maximum number we want to be entered in this input field. So these are used for numeric values, of course. So for the min, I will say 0 because I don't want anybody to write a negative age. And for the max, I will say, let me say 200. I think that's a realistic age to say nobody in the world, at least the modern years, has ever reached. So let me save this, and we see age. This is the default value we gave 10, and I can increase as I want, or I can decrease, as well as I can just cancel all of this and write my own value myself, 99, and submit. Password is required. Let me remove the required field attribute from this password so that it should not disturb our work again. So I'll give the age of 99 and I can submit, and with a see it has refreshed. And if I try to give a value like -8 for the age and submit, it gives an error. Age must be greater than or equal to 0. And in the same way, let me also give an age like 201 and submit this, and it says value must be less than or equal to 200. Now let me give 2.5 as my age and submit. You see it gives an error because the numbers do not take or do not consider decimal values by default, so we have to give whole numbers here.